It's early morning, mid-June, somewhere in Ohio or Georgia, or right outside your back door. The pond is still. The reeds haven't moved yet. The light is that particular gold that only happens in the first 10 minutes after sunrise, the kind that makes everything look like it matters. And then something launches off a stem. Not flies, launches. Like a helicopter that was already calculating its trajectory before it left the ground. 40 feet away, a mosquito takes flight. It doesn't know anything is wrong. It doesn't see what's coming. Nothing could see what's coming because what's coming isn't reacting to where the mosquito is. It's flying to where the mosquito will be. 40 milliseconds later, it's over. That is a dragonfly hunt, and it works 95% of the time, not 70%, not 80, 95. For context, a lion hunting on the Serengeti catches its prey about 25% of the time. A great white shark, about 50%. A bald eagle, one of the most celebrated hunters in American wildlife, catches what it chases roughly 70% of the time. The dragonfly catches 95%. It is, by every measure we have, the most effective predator that has ever lived on this planet. This isn't a bug. It isn't a pest. It isn't something you wave away from your drink at a summer barbecue. This is a precision hunting machine that has been operating at near perfect efficiency for longer than the dinosaurs existed, longer than flowers existed, longer than almost anything alive today has existed. 325 million years. And right now, one of them is probably within a quarter mile of where you're sitting. There is something else, something the scientists discovered about how the dragonfly actually hunts. Not how it chases, not how it reacts, how it thinks. And when that discovery reached the engineering labs at Harvard and eventually caught the attention of defense researchers, it changed the way people think about autonomous flight and targeting systems. We'll get to that, but not yet. First, I want you to really see this animal, because most of us have looked at dragonflies our whole lives without ever actually seeing them. We notice the wings, maybe the color. We think summer, pond, childhood, and we move on. That ends today. Let's start with the hunt. Most predators work by reaction. A cat sees a mouse move. The cat responds. There's a chase. There's a struggle. And somewhere in that process, instinct and speed decide the outcome. That's how most of the animal kingdom operates: stimulus, response, pursuit. The dragonfly does something different. When a dragonfly locks onto prey, it doesn't chase where the target is. It calculates where the target is going and flies there first. It intercepts, like a quarterback leading a receiver downfield. Except the quarterback is also flying at 30 miles per hour, and the receiver doesn't know the play is happening. Dr. Stacy Combs at Harvard University spent years filming dragonfly hunts in slow motion, hundreds of them, and what her team found reshaped how biologists think about insect intelligence. The dragonfly isolates one single target out of a swarm of dozens, sometimes hundreds of moving insects. It locks on, and then it adjusts its flight path continuously, frame by frame, in real time, until the interception is complete. The whole sequence takes less than a second. The success rate across hundreds of observed hunts, 95%. Here's where it gets really strange. The dragonfly does most of this hunting with its head nearly still, while its body tilts and pivots and accelerates. The head stays level, locked on the target like a guided camera. Engineers have a word for this kind of stabilization: They call it a gimbal system. The dragonfly evolved 300 million years before we invented the concept. Now look at the eyes. A dragonfly's eyes cover nearly its entire head. Not two small forward-facing eyes like yours and mine, two enormous compound structures, each containing up to 30,000 individual lenses. Together, they give the dragonfly nearly 360 degrees of vision. It can see behind itself, it can see above and below simultaneously. It perceives ultraviolet light. It reads polarized light off the surface of water, the same technology used in the lenses of expensive fishing sunglasses. Except the dragonfly has been doing it for longer than fish have existed in their current form. And the colors it sees? Pay attention to this. Humans have 3 types of color receptors in our eyes. We call ourselves good at seeing color, and compared to most mammals, we are. Dogs have 2. We have 3. The dragonfly has 11. 11 types of color receptors. The world it sees is so far outside our perception that we don't even have language for what it experiences. Colors that don't exist for us. Patterns invisible to us. A summer afternoon that looks to a dragonfly like something we could never dream. And it processes all of this, all 11 color channels, all 30,000 lenses per eye, the full sphere of vision in real time, while flying backward, while locking onto a single mosquito in a cloud of 100 identical mosquitoes. Now add the wings. Most flying insects have 2 wings. The dragonfly has 4, and here is what makes them remarkable. Each wing is controlled independently, not in pairs. Independently, the dragonfly can adjust the angle, speed, and stroke of each of its 4 wings separately, simultaneously, in flight. This is why it can hover perfectly still over a pond. This is why it can fly straight up, straight down, sideways, backward. This is why it can stop in midair, reverse direction, and be 10 feet away before your eye has registered the movement. No other flying creature moves like this. Not hummingbirds, not hawks, not anything we have built. Now go back, way back. The order these animals belong to is called Odonata. The name comes from the Greek word for tooth, referring to the serrated jaws they use to hold prey. Odonata includes both dragonflies and their quieter cousins, the damselflies. And the fossil record for this order is remarkably complete, because it goes back 325 million years. To give that number a shape, the dinosaurs appeared close to 230 million years ago. The dragonfly's ancestors were already 95 million years old by then. When the first T. rex walked the earth, dragonflies were ancient history. The most famous of these ancient relatives was a creature called Meganeura. It lived during the Carboniferous period, in forests of giant ferns and towering club mosses, under an atmosphere so rich in oxygen that insects could grow to sizes impossible today. Meganeura had a wingspan of more than 2 feet. It hunted other insects, possibly small amphibians, moving through prehistoric air with the same intercepting logic its descendants use over your garden pond today. 2 feet. Picture that over your backyard. Picture it hovering over the bird bath. That lineage from Meganeura in a carboniferous swamp to the iridescent blue darner resting on your fence post this July is unbroken. 325 million years of the same basic design, refined to something so close to perfect that evolution has had almost nothing left to improve. And then there's the life you never see. The dragonfly you watch in summer, the jeweled, hovering, light-catching thing is not the majority of its life. Not even close. Before that adult emerges, the dragonfly lives underwater as a nymph, hunting, breathing through gills, growing, molting its skin up to 15 times. That underwater stage lasts anywhere from several months to 5 years, depending on the species. 5 years beneath the surface of a pond, and then a few weeks of flight, a few weeks of light and air, and the thing we call a dragonfly before it's done. Most of us walk past ponds every day without knowing what's living in them. So let's take stock of what we know so far. The dragonfly catches 95% of everything. It chases the highest hunt success rate of any predator on Earth. It sees the world through 30,000 lenses and 11 color channels in nearly full 360 degrees. It flies with 4 independently controlled wings in any direction at will, and it has been doing all of this in essentially the same body for 325 million years. We are just getting started. If this is the kind of story that makes you look at your backyard differently, that's exactly why this channel exists. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. And drop a comment right now. Have you seen a dragonfly this week? Where were you? I'll meet you back here in a moment. There is a dragonfly species you have almost certainly never heard of. It has no common backyard name. It doesn't show up on birding apps or nature calendars, but it may be the greatest long-distance traveler of any insect on Earth. Its name is Pantala flavescens. The common name is the wandering glider, and wander it does. Researchers tracking this species using stable hydrogen isotopes, chemical signatures locked into the dragonfly's wings that reveal where the water it developed in came from, discovered something that stopped the scientific community cold. The wandering glider completes a multi-generational migration of nearly 11,000 miles. It rides global wind systems across open ocean, from India to East Africa, from the Maldives to the coast of South America, generation after generation, passing the route forward like a relay baton that no individual runner ever sees in full. The monarch butterfly, America's most celebrated migratory insect, travels about 3,000 miles. The wandering glider travels nearly 4 times that distance, but it gets even more remarkable. No single dragonfly makes the whole route. The migration is too long for one lifetime. So the wandering glider does something that requires a moment to fully absorb. It completes the route across generations. Each generation flies one leg, lays eggs in temporary rain pools along the way, dies, and the next generation, having never met its parents, having received no instructions, no map, no memory, continues in the same direction to the same destinations, along the same wind corridors their ancestors used. Scientists believe this navigational information is encoded in the dragonfly's DNA, a route written in genetics rather than memory, an inheritance not of knowledge, but of direction. You carry memories of the places you've been. The wandering glider carries a map of places it has never seen. Now hold that thought, because what I'm about to tell you sits in uncomfortable contrast to everything we've just covered. Here's what most people don't know. 16% of dragonfly and damselfly species worldwide are currently threatened with extinction. Not declining, threatened. And the number one reason is one of the quietest environmental crises in American history: wetland loss. Since European settlement of North America, the United States has lost more than half of its wetlands. More than half. The marshes, the bogs, the seasonal ponds, the slow-moving streams edged with cattails, more than half of them are gone. drained for agriculture, filled for development, diverted for irrigation. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that at the peak of wetland loss in the mid-20th century, America was draining about 400,000 acres of wetland per year. 400,000 acres every year. A dragonfly needs clean, still, slow-moving water to lay its eggs. Its nymphs need submerged vegetation, healthy sediment, unpolluted water to spend those 5 years growing underwater. Take away the wetlands, you take away the nursery. And without nurseries, there are no adults, no hovering hunters over summer ponds, no iridescent wings catching the late afternoon light. The loss is already visible in the data. Populations of wetland-dependent species, not just dragonflies, but frogs, salamanders, herons, and dozens of songbird species that rely on wetland insects for food have dropped sharply across the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic over the past 50 years. But there is a thread of light in this. Stay with me. Researchers at Dartmouth College, working in partnership with the U.S. Geological Survey, launched a program called the Dragonfly Mercury Project. Their insight was this: dragonfly nymphs, because they live for years in wetland sediment and sit near the top of the aquatic food chain, absorb and concentrate mercury and other pollutants from their environment. By testing dragonfly nymphs from wetlands across the country, scientists can build a detailed map of water quality one data point at a time, one pond at a time. From national parks to backyard water features, the dragonfly, it turns out, is not just a predator. It is a sensor, a living instrument for reading the health of the water we all depend on. And that brings me to a man most Americans have never heard of, though they should have. Charles Henry Turner was born in Cincinnati in 1867. He became one of the first Black Americans to earn a doctorate in zoology at a time when most universities would not admit him and most scientific journals would not publish him. He published over 70 scientific papers anyway, and among his most significant contributions was something radical for his era: the argument that insects do not simply react to their environment, they learn, they remember, they make decisions. Turner studied bees, ants, cockroaches, and moths. But his careful observations of dragonfly behavior, the way they adjusted flight paths, the way they appeared to anticipate rather than merely respond, were decades ahead of what mainstream science was willing to accept. He died in 1923, largely uncelebrated. The scientific consensus he challenged, that insects were purely mechanical, purely instinctual, would not begin to crack for another 50 years. He was right. And here's the part nobody expects. The story of the dragonfly, the most effective hunter alive, the ancient body, the encoded migration, the threatened wetlands, all of it leads somewhere. Somewhere you probably didn't expect when you started watching a video about a backyard insect. It leads to the question of what a mind is and what it means to think. Let's go back to the hunt. Not the mechanics this time. Not the speed, not the wings, not the eyes. Something deeper than all of that. When Dr. Stacy Combs and her team at Harvard began filming dragonfly hunts in high-speed slow motion, they weren't just counting success rates. They were trying to understand the architecture behind the success. Why does the dragonfly win 95% of the time when every other predator on Earth, faster animals, bigger animals, animals with far more brain tissue, wins far less often? The answer came from neuroscience. Inside the dragonfly's tiny brain, a structure roughly the size of a sesame seed researchers identified a cluster of neurons, unlike anything they had seen in insect biology before. These neurons do one thing, one very specific thing. They track a single small moving object against a complex, cluttered background, and they never lose it. Scientists named this system the Small Target Motion Detector, and what makes it remarkable isn't just what it does, it's how it does it. The Small Target Motion Detector doesn't respond to where the prey is. It calculates a vector, a trajectory, a prediction. The neuron fires not for the current position of the target, but for where that target will be in a fraction of a second, accounting for the target's speed. The dragonfly's own speed, wind, and the curvature of the flight path. This is not reaction. This is not instinct in the way we normally use the word. This is modeling, real-time predictive modeling, executed by a circuit smaller than a grain of rice, 325 million years before any human being thought to write down the mathematics behind it. Now, I can keep the promise I made at the beginning of this video. When this research reached the engineering community, when papers from Harvard's biomechanics lab describing the dragonfly's predictive neural circuit began circulating beyond biology departments, something unexpected happened. Defense researchers took notice. Engineers working on autonomous drone systems, on missile guidance, on the specific problem of tracking one small, fast-moving object against a noisy visual background recognized something. The dragonfly had already solved their problem. Not approximately, not partially, completely, elegantly, in hardware so small and so efficient that the entire targeting system uses less energy than a flickering candle. Research groups backed by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, began studying the dragonfly's neural architecture as a direct model for autonomous targeting systems. The intercepting flight path, the gimbal stabilized head, the small target motion detector. Engineers weren't just inspired by the dragonfly. They were reverse engineering it. The animal hovering over your backyard pond this summer is running targeting software that the most advanced defense research agency on Earth is still working to replicate. This isn't coincidence. This isn't luck. This isn't 325 million years of accident. This is engineering perfected so far before we arrived that we are only now beginning to read the manual. And here is what I want you to sit with for a moment. We have a habit, a deeply human habit, of drawing a line between ourselves and the rest of the living world. On one side of the line, minds, consciousness, intention, intelligence. On the other side, instinct, mechanism, reflex, reaction. Charles Henry Turner spent his career arguing that line was wrong, that insects learned, adapted, remembered, decided. The scientific establishment of his time dismissed him. A century later, the neuroscience of the dragonfly's predictive brain proved him right in ways even he may not have imagined. The dragonfly does not have a large brain. It does not have language or memory in the way you and I carry memory, but it has something of precision, of attention, a modeling of the future, a commitment to a single locked target that human engineers have spent decades and billions of dollars trying to build from scratch. And it does it every morning, over every pond, for every mosquito. Look closely at this. The next time a dragonfly holds perfectly still over a patch of water, and you will see this. This summer, if you slow down long enough to look, understand what you are watching. You are watching 325 million years of engineering. You are watching a brain the size of a sesame seed run calculations that took Harvard researchers years to fully describe. You are watching the most successful predator in the history of this planet do what it has always done. Quietly, perfectly, in your backyard. So let's bring this home. 3 things I want you to take away from today. The first, the dragonfly catches 95% of everything it chases, the highest hunt success rate of any predator that has ever lived on this planet. That number is powered by a predictive neural circuit smaller than a grain of rice, which defense engineers at DARPA are still working to fully replicate. The most effective targeting system on Earth evolved 325 million years ago, and it lives in your backyard. The second, what you see when a dragonfly hovers over a pond is the final few weeks of a life that began up to 5 years earlier, underwater, invisible, in the sediment beneath the surface. The jeweled wings and the hovering flight, that's the ending. The story happened beneath the water, in the dark, in the cold, for years before you ever saw it. Most of the most important things work that way. The third, more than half of America's wetlands are gone. 16% of dragonfly species are threatened. And the most effective thing any individual person can do right now, this weekend, with a container from a hardware store and a few aquatic plants, is put water in their yard. Still water, clean water. Even a half-barrel pond gives dragonflies a place to lay eggs, gives nymphs a place to grow, gives the local ecosystem one more foothold in a landscape that has been losing them steadily for 100 years. You don't have to save a wetland, you just have to save a puddle. Now, have you seen dragonflies around your yard or a local pond this summer? Tell me what species, or just what color, in the comments below. I read every one. The dragonfly has outlasted everything this planet has thrown at it. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, the end of the dinosaurs, the Permian extinction that killed 96% of all marine life. It has survived all of it. With a brain the size of a sesame seed and a hunt success rate the rest of us can only dream about. Don't let the last thing it can't survive be a drained pond.